There was no birthday party for Adrian. There wasn't even one planned. Because you're going to hear on March 18th, Christian Tyrrell called 911 because Adrian was unresponsive. You're going to hear from MedStar, who arrived and found a critically ill toddler lying on the floor in his room. He was completely unresponsive, and he was rushed to Cook Children's Hospital. The only person with him inside that house on that day when MedStar arrived was Christian Tyrrell. You're going to hear that when Adrian got to the hospital, the prognosis was extremely grim. He had a massive skull fracture in the back of his little head and bleeding and swelling inside of his brain. Adrian was never going to leave that hospital, and he died the next day after donating some of his organs. You're going to hear that the Fort Worth police arrived at the hospital and spoke to Jessica and Christian at the hospital to find out what happened. How could something so terrible happen? It had to have been an accident. There had to be some explanation for what broke this child's skull open. And you're going to hear that there wasn't an explanation for it. You're going to hear exactly what Christian Tyrrell told Detective Amy Heisey with the Fort Worth Police Department. You're going to hear that nothing that he said made any sense. That nothing that he said could account for the injuries that Adrian sustained. You are going to hear a lot about Jessica, his mother, because they were both in the house with Adrian all day on the 17th. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about who caused these injuries. But it's going to be clear to you at the end of all of this that the person who killed Adrian is sitting right over there in that chair. And make no mistake, there is nothing that the state of Texas thinks that Jessica Langley did correctly. She wasn't a good mother, and she wasn't protected. And that's the minimum, because she's also criminally responsible for what happened to Adrian. But this isn't Jessica Langley's day. It's his day. Because we're going to prove to you he is the one who fractured that child's skull and killed him. Jessica will get her day in that chair, but it is not this week. You're going to hear about some cell phone searches that this defendant did on his cell phone while Adrian died at their home the night of the 17th going into the 18th. Searches like how to tell if someone went brain dead. Toddler can't use right side of body after hitting head. And when you hear that, you'll know that what he said about how that child was acting was completely wrong. Because Adrian was not fine on the 17th. Not after lunch. He was critically injured, and he was dying all throughout the day, all into the 18th, until he finally passed on the 19th. You're going to hear the Fort Worth Police Department went inside their home and collected evidence. And you're going to hear that what they found inside of that home was a hole in the wall in Adrian's bedroom, 5 feet up behind a door. And that's what happened to Adrian. His head was slammed into the wall, and you're going to hear that they cut that wall out and was sent to the Fort Worth PD Crime Lab, and you're going to hear the analysis that was done on that wall. And you're going to hear the results of the DNA that was found in that wall. And you're going to know that that's what caused Adrian's death. When you hear the specifics about the injuries, when we bring you doctor after doctor after doctor who worked on Adrian, it's going to be clear to you that what happened to him was not some fall. It's not a household accident that happens to little kids all the time. you're going to know that the force required to cause this injury was great. And from that, it will be clear to you that when this defendant slammed a 2-year-old's head into the wall with all the force he could muster, he intended to kill him. He knew the results of his actions, because there could be nothing else when you slam a child that hard, causing a massive break in his skull, causing his brain to bleed and swell. When the doctors come in and talk about his injuries, you're going to hear that he was covered in bruises. You're going to hear that there was bleeding inside of his eyes. Nothing about that is accidental. Nothing about that is reckless. And doctor after doctor is going to tell you that. What you're going to hear in this courtroom and what you're going to see in this courtroom for the next week isn't going to be easy. This is something you hear about in the newspaper and you can turn aside and say, not my child, not my friend's child. And turn the paper over, click your browser closed on the Star Telegram and move on. But not today and not this week. Because you are going to hear that Adrian Langlace was murdered by his mother's boyfriend, and his mother didn't do anything about it. And that's not something you're going to be able to turn your head from or put your head in the sand and pretend like it doesn't happen. It's easier to live in that kind of world. But this week, we're asking you to pay close attention and to hear everything that we bring you and all the evidence we bring you, because this does happen. And a child has been taken from his family and from all of us before he had a chance to really live. And we're asking you, at the end of all of this evidence, to do what is right and to what is just, and hold Christian Tyrrell responsible for the capital murder he committed on March 17, 2015. Because it is what he will deserve when you've heard every bit of evidence that we bring you.